What if you're in charge of a team or a business and you're not hitting your goals and you're looking to have someone take a look at what you're doing and give you advice to help you build your skills, build your team to be more successful? Well, I have a phenomenal trainer, coach, keynote speaker, author, JM Ryerson, joining me today, and his passion for training and developing teams, helping you individually unlock your potential, as well as taking your teams to the highest goals that you're looking for in terms of achievement, revenue, efficiency. Well, JM Ryerson, the author of the best-selling book, Let's Go Win, is going to join me today. And I can't wait for you to hear what he has to say, his tactical advice to help you improve performance. So without further ado, let's dive into today's episode of You're in Charge, Conversations That Spark Change with JM Ryerson. All right. Well, JM, thank you so much for being here. So before we even get started, what's the JM stand for?
James Michael is what it stands for, but I was a slow child. So my parents made it extremely easy. And they're like, look, JM, I think he can handle that. So and that's what I've been literally all of my life.
So that means that when you were really in trouble, they used your full name.
Oh, 100%. I knew I was in deep doo-doo. If James Michael Ryerson, oh man, what did I do this time?
Yeah. So again, thanks for being here. I'm really excited to sort of unpack a few things. Your book, Let's Go Win, available on Amazon bestseller. I started going through it because I met you when you spoke at our conference. And so I started going through the book. One, very accessible, but really impactful. So let's roll back a little bit. How did you get to the point of deciding this was a path for you, that it was important for you to help others succeed?
So it all started with my two boys who are 15 and 11 now. And about 3 years ago, I always put my goals on my bathroom mirror. And my youngest boy, Trey, comes in and he says, Dad, how's that book come along? And I shamefully had to look him in the eye and say, not very good, bud. I literally have a little bit of chapter 1 done. And that day he destroyed me and inspired me all at the same time, because he asked us a very simple question. How's it coming? And this book was intended for them. That's why I wrote the book, is so they didn't scrape their knees as much as I did. Because in the book, the whole idea is lessons from my parents, grandparents,
Right.
authors, mentors. I wanted to take all of this information and make it into a very easy read. So if you jump on a plane from New York, land in LA, you can walk away and say, oh, cool, there's some things I can go apply in these various areas of my life. And so that was the whole idea, Glenn. And it ended up being an amazing journey because it allowed me to put so many thoughts onto paper and then really give it to my kids, so that, let's say I get hit by a bus tomorrow. Now they have an idea of what I stood for, what I believed in,
right.
how I feel they might succeed a little bit more in life. So that was the whole idea. And I had a gal, she looked at me and she said, I didn't think you were selfish. And I said, I didn't think I was selfish either. What do you mean? And she says, if you only share this with 2 human beings, you're selfish. Okay, point taken. Let's publish. And that started the journey of Let's Go Win to the company to what it is today.
I love that story. And I believe from your book, that very inspirational kick in the rear end came from Danelle Delgado. So she is a person to be reckoned with, and I would not want to be on the receiving end of that stare telling you that you're not delivering for others. But you mentioned something, and I've heard this before, where yes, we don't want our children to sort of scrape their knees as much as we did. And I know I'm in a better position, just knowledge wise, even financially, than maybe my parents were. And that's always a fear of mine. Am I making it too easy for them? Where part of where we got to was because we scraped their knees. What do you say to someone regarding that?
No, it's 100% accurate. And it's a fair fear to have that we all should have, because I'm sure just like you were told to come home when the lights, when it was getting dark. And
Mhm.
now there's a whole generation of kids that didn't do this. And I'm generalizing the country, of course,
Right.
but so many kids don't have that opportunity. So to begin with, the generations before us and our generation, look, we got to really kind of fall flat on our face and then figure it out.
Mhm.
So it is a valid fear. However, that doesn't mean that, again, for those that don't have the chance to have a parent in their life, that was my ideas. Like, look, I wish I could go back and ask my grandparents questions. That's a regret. And I try not to live with regret, but I didn't ask some of the questions. I don't want my kids, let's say again, I'm gone, my parents are gone, they can't ask them. So that was the idea of putting it on paper. Does it help them? No. My youngest, he is going to make his own mistakes. There's no other way. You cannot talk him into anything.
Right.
But yet he can go back to this tool and say, okay, maybe dad wasn't that crazy. This is maybe something that can help. So I 100% let my kids fail all the time. I'm a big believer in failure. But as a parent, of course, I do want to protect them as much as I can. So if the information leads to them not getting hurt as much, cool. That was ultimately the hope.
Well, I was speaking with someone on interviewed them a few weeks ago on the podcast, and I think the discussion was around failure. And I think it's more how you look at failure. Is
Mm.
failure something bad? Is failure something good? Uh, I also believe in the Tony Robbins method of what they'll call modeling, where if I want to do something, study someone who did it. Um, there's no reason for me to skin my knee on the same thing they did. I'm going to skin my knee on something else. I have to be more prepared to understand how to deal with that failure. And I think from reading your book and the idea, I'm assuming for your children and what I try to do for my two boys is the same thing. You're going to fail differently.
Mm.
Technology is different. The world is different. But do you know how to pick yourself up and move forward and learn from that so that you don't make the same mistake over and over and over again?
It's 100% accurate. And I had a guy on a podcast one time say, the only reason you would fail is if you didn't learn. And I thought that was so profound, that
Mm,
sentence. The only way that you truly fail is if you didn't learn from it. And that is something, growth mindset. So every single day, my kids, we do a daily affirmation.
mhm.
And in having a growth mindset, that's a part of my company's mantras. That's a part of my kids' daily affirmations. Because truth be told, the whole idea is, look, I'm going to not be great at something today, but if I continue to work, continue to get better, continue to educate myself and skin my knees, look, that's all a part of the process. So I 100%, man, it's one of those things where it's like, look, it's only failure if you didn't learn something from it. And as you said, don't make the same mistake twice.
Right. Yeah, we did this for a while when our kids were growing up at school, and we still do it now. We'll ask them. I think it was the Obamas talked about. They would have discussions with their two girls about roses and thorns. So, what was
Mm.
good today? But what did you learn today? A version of it was, what did you fail at today? And that's important to discuss that and also bring that to the forefront for any individual so that they can discuss it and so that you can go through what did you learn and how did you react. I think that's really important because we spend so much time focusing on the success and we celebrate success, and there's books about success and there's podcasts built about success and clubhouse rooms all about success. Nobody really embraces the reality of what it is that you fell on your face over and over again. It's the persistence, I think, that we should be really investigating more, because in this Instagram world, we see the trappings, but I'm not sure we really embrace the journey as much as we think it's going to be fast and easy, because look at the picture.
No, so true. And anybody that's ever done sales, run a business,
Hmm.
was an athlete, you get your teeth kicked in many,
Yes.
many times. And it's literally, it's rocky. It's just getting up again and continuing to get back up again. And, Churchill said it's literally success is failing over and over without losing any enthusiasm. And I chopped that quote up a little bit, but that is what I always think about is, look, I'm going to get knocked down. It's just the only reason I would lose is if I don't get back up again.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a gentleman at our conference who, and I loved his analogy. He says, running a business, you get kicked in the teeth. After a while, learn to enjoy the taste of shoelaces. And
I
it's
love it.
just one of those things. So let's talk about that as we move this from individuals to businesses, but also, as I said in the pre-show, I built this podcast channel with the idea of helping those who get thrown into leadership, and it's the, hey, figure it out yourself. And for whatever reason, investing in our people, a lot of times it's front loaded, it's not really long term, it's not inspected. And in the book you call it failing upwards. I like calling it failing forward, meaning your momentum's carrying you. So when you go into businesses and they're bring you in to speak or to help them through struggles, what is there a common thing that, regardless of industry, regardless of if they're not performing at their maximum or generating the results that they're looking for, is there something that you would say is a common theme that's missing?
There's three. They don't know their culture, the values. They truly are not clear on that. They don't know what their leadership philosophy is.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't know, then certainly as you go down in a hierarchy, then no one knows.
Right.
And lastly, there's just very little clarity. It's amazing how many businesses I meet with, Glenn, where I'm like, all right, what are we trying to accomplish today, this week, this month, this quarter? And if you were to go around a room of 10, 9 answers will be different. And
Right.
it's like, it's remarkable because I'll look at the leader and say, how clear is everybody on, what we're trying to accomplish? Oh, they're clear. They know exactly what they're doing. And we spend all this time in meetings. Yet when you get in there and you ask some really basic questions, and that's the benefit of coming from the outside.
Sure.
I just ask dumb questions like, what are we trying to do? What is the goal today? What is the core 3 things we have to accomplish? And you will get blank stares or answers scattered. Now, that is what is the shame of not being taught how to do it, is what you're talking about. So often people go from they performed well in sales, so now they're a manager and now they're a leader. No one put their arm around them and said, hey, here's a system. Here's how we're going to do this. These are the things that are so important. And the last thing I would say, brother, for every leader out there, if you don't have a mentor, if you don't have someone that you talk to on a weekly basis at a minimum, guiding you, helping you, teaching you some of the things that they have learned along the way, that is a mistake. And I tell anybody, if you are working with someone and they don't have a mentor, stop working with them because
Right.
that's not the right human being.
Wow. Okay. So we got a bunch of things because my brain went into a lot of different directions. And on my cheat sheet of notes here, things we wanted to talk to, and we did not plan this, but you hit on 2 of the 3 buzzwords that get bandied about in business. So I want you to unpack them in your, what it means to you and why do you think it could misconstrue. The first one you said was culture. Culture seems to be a buzzword. We have great culture. What does that mean? Oh, we're going to build better culture. We have to fix our culture. But yet that's not tangible for people. So in your words, it's asking you, what does that word culture mean or should mean for a business? How would you explain it?
Who are we? What do we stand for? How do we show up? Right. That's the core of who you are. So I ask this at every meeting that I start. What is this culture? What do we stand for? And again, you are going to get so many different answers. And so I'll go to the leader and I'll say, hey, what is your mission statement? What are your core values? And he or she will know them. But so rarely does anybody beneath them, and I'm not saying beneath in a bad way, but in the hierarchy structure, do they actually know what this company was founded on, why they exist? And so that's what culture means to me. And here's the truth. And I said this on stage. I have made the same mistake, by the way. I
Sure.
remember where I had 6 core values and I thought everybody knew them. And I forgot one of the values myself. So you have to make it really easy. And that's why I always suggest to any of the executive teams I work with, we're looking for 3 core values. For whatever reason, our brain can remember 3. It
Right.
just groups it into 3. And if you can go around and ask from A to 1 to 100, what are our core values? Once you get where everyone can say them at the drop of a hat, you know you've got your core values, and your culture will be aligned with what you're trying to do. Until you can get to that point, you truly don't know what your culture is, nor will your customer, nor will everyone you work with.
Well, let me push back on a little on that. Now, I've heard companies who, they'll carry cards. Everybody carries a card, and I got my 3 values. But what happens to there, in my mind, there has to be the next step to that, because I've been in businesses myself, or I've visited as a consultant and a trainer, where everybody could tell me those 3 words, but they didn't know what that meant in terms of their day-to-day or actions, right? Just because I can say, be self-motivated, or we're going to do X, or, we are trustworthy. Well, what does that mean in day-to-day actions? Because then, to your point, is I could have a room of 10 people all tell me these virtues and we feel good about it. Then they go all in different ways, and either their actions counter it or it's their version of it. So there's no solidity to actually the execution on that. So do you think that, what you just said, that's phase 1, and then we have to get into what we have to do day to day, month to month, year to year to deliver that?
Yeah, 1,000%. It's phase 1. And I love what you said, the execution part. So for instance, if somebody is operating outside of a core value, so for me, courage, fun, and transcend. Now, I always have to define what transcend means,
Right.
but courage is the one that'll come up where people won't act in maybe a courageous manner. That is my opportunity to say, look, I want to make sure we're clear on what this company stands for. And this is my opportunity to say, I want to make sure this is the right home for you.
Right.
Because if you act this way, you're not welcome on the team. Is that okay? And they may look at you and say, oh no, I'm not, this is not what I want to be. Cool. I want to know that now. I don't want to know that
Right.
5 years
Right.
from now after you've been a headache within the organization.
Right.
So
But
it is phase one,
so
100%.
then do you have to help them delineate that, meaning that you're going to show them how to, what actions you're going to have to do, or what actions you're going to, like in that case of courageous, someone's going to say, well, I thought I was courageous, or someone else is going to say, well, no, that wasn't. So then it's an opportunity for you to really train them to say, well, in this situation, if we did this, you see how we stepped further than what a normal action would be. Is that, like, again, that idea of helping coach them through to see if they can execute on that, or if they can't, and then maybe they can't be on your team?
100%. Because here's the other thing, at every single meeting, we talk about what our values are and what our mantras. So
Right.
it's not like they heard it one time or they're just carrying a card. This is going to come up every single meeting. So it is going to become ingrained. There should be very little ambiguity about what we're talking about specific to the word that we're associating the culture around. And yes, it's just a word, but when you define it, and that's what you're talking about, that happens from the interview chair to the first day on the job to their 100th day on the job to their 1,000th day on the job.
Right. Right.
They have heard it so much. And you will also find once you get your culture down, and I know people get tired of hearing the word, but once you get that culture down, you will know exactly who doesn't fit. That is your
Right.
opportunity to remove them, because that could be the cancer or whatever you want to call it that can absolutely destroy your culture and your team.
Yeah. And I think what we're talking about is that next phase. And this is where I really love this topic is, in my mind, culture is driven by also the day-to-day processes, the execution of the job. Because if I built a framework that puts you in a position to be able to, through your actions, right? I always say actions cause results. So we don't get the results we want, We got to go look at what we were doing in order to see where the breakdown is. But I, as a leader, need to provide you with that consistent structure so that you can feel, to your point, comfortable and being, if I execute on these tasks, these structures day in and day out, I'm supporting the culture. When we leave it to everyone's idea of what they think that word means or what I think we should be doing, to your point, that's where we get that disconnect. That's where we get frustrations. That's where we get, oh, is that what you wanted me to do, JM? I thought you meant X, versus really building that process. So I love that idea of culture being starting out with a concept, but then we have to build actions so that our employees, our people can deliver on those through their efforts. And then we can encourage their effort. We can mentor them in that effort. But if we don't provide it, we're sort of shooting ourselves in the foot.
No, 100%. Well, here's the other thing. This is when I know a team is really gelling and gets it, when it's pure accountability. So for instance, let's say me as a leader, I don't act in line with one of the values and someone calls me on it.
Right.
That is when I know a team is really in sync. They are the synergy, name every word you can think of where they are operating really efficiently, because I believe in radical transparency. In my companies, everyone has a voice. You get the chance to call. I don't care if you're CEO or janitor or what your title is. I don't care. We are all going to operate in integrity with the core values. And if someone is not, that's an opportunity to say, hey, I saw you in this interaction and it wasn't in line with what we're talking about. And the leader, if they're humble, if they have humility, they say, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. You're right. And boom, we move on with the day. It's not a big thing.
Right. I think, and because in your book and just speaking with you, the idea of sports, it's an easy default because team works and everybody has a different job to do in order to move the team forward. And if one person gets out of line, the team's not successful. And that idea of everyone has a role to do. And I really think, and for business leaders out there, it's in my mind, it's a misconception. I was an actor for many years, and I remember a situation where a director was struggling with a different actor, trying to get them to do what they needed to do, and they said, "No, you're cramping my creative style." And he said something that always stuck with me. He said, "No, the playwright wrote the words this way with the directions, right? If you say I have to get the phone and you're on the wrong side of the stage, it doesn't make sense to the audience." But he said, if you actually know your lines, you know where you're supposed to be, the more structure you have actually gives you more freedom. It's counterintuitive, but if I know what I'm supposed to do every single day, to your point, that consistency from leadership, I know how you're going to hold me accountable. I know what you expect, actually allows me to be comfortable in the job. And to your point, in your example, as a sales person, someone in sales, I can actually listen to the customer. I don't have to be thinking about it because I know my product so well. I know what's next step. I don't have to worry about getting there till I get there. And I think that, again, that idea of building structure and accountability in a consistent manner allows the team to flourish, allows the team to excel, because we can run as hard as we want because we know what direction we're running in.
Oh, I so agree with that. And you said the word, I hope every salesperson hears what you just said. One of the biggest problems I see when it comes to sales is they don't listen. They don't listen to what the client is trying to tell them. They're trying to tell them exactly what they want, but you have to close your mouth and hear it. And what you're talking about with that process, now they're not trying to figure out what the process is, what they know exactly how they need to show up, and they get a
Right.
chance to listen. And then all they have to do is literally do what they say they're going to do. If you put those two things together as a salesperson, you are going to be wildly successful. Listen to them and follow through with what you said you're going to do. Clients will love you. Your referrals will jump out of the roof. I
Right.
love what you said there because it's so true.
I want to, so pivoting to the I think the next logical one word from your book as well, and we've touched on a little bit, is accountability. So there's two parts to accountability. One is personal accountability. So again, following the path of our example of a salesperson, it's my job to know my products inside and out so well, to understand what potential concerns someone would ask, questions to ask. I need the answers so that I can be comfortable in listening without, as soon as you say something, I'm already thinking what I'm going to say. And so really I'm disconnected. The other accountability is as a leader, accountability, how do you hold someone accountable to that job? How do you coach them? So let's talk about personal accountability first. When you're working with individuals or for yourself, when the words personal accountability, what does that mean to you?
What are we trying to accomplish? What are we literally, why are we doing whatever we're doing? So in this example, I'm going to go work at whatever my job is. I'm going to go work in sales.
Right.
Okay, cool. Why are you working in? Because I need to support my family. Cool. And I ask two questions in every interview. What is the minimum amount of income you need to make? And how much would you like to make? And the
Right.
reason I ask both is the minimum, if they're not making that amount of money, I'm not doing my job as a leader. And so,
Right.
and if I follow up, it's important for my kids. Okay, cool. So your kids are very important to you. Yes. And they are literally setting all the accountability measures that I need for their job. It's rare, especially in an interview, it's rare that I'm going to put their measures higher than they will themselves. So once you do that personal accountability where they say, this is exactly what I need to do in order to take care of my family. Now, as a leader, it's just my job to check in with them and say, how are we doing? It doesn't
Right.
have to be a negative come down on them. They should be clear on exactly what they need to do, so much so that they are taking the person accountability before the leader ever gets there.
No, I see. I love that because, and for those of you who lead teams, listen to what JM just said. The idea of, I'm telling you what's important to me. Maybe it's my kids. Maybe it's I'm saving for college. Maybe it's I want to buy X, Y, and Z. Whatever that is, that goes into your manager. I call it the manager toolbox. So when I'm having a conversation with JM about performance, hey, we're almost there. I can reference that. They now go, oh, Glenn remembers why I'm doing this. And also, if I need to push you a little bit, I can say, well, what about that car? What about paying off those loans? What about those kids? But what I'm doing is uh, helping them on their plan, right? That's really the key here for you listening here. I usually would recommend, I did this for years with my team. Check in the morning. What are you working on today? Like 5 minutes, 3 minutes. What are you working on today? XYZ. Great. Whenever I would check in, to your point, it's not me coming down on them. I'm helping them fulfill their plan. If I tell them, here's the three things you have to do today, I will bet you anything, there's at least one of them they're going, well, he doesn't understand. That's not really important. I should be doing something else. And they're fighting me on the plan versus I'm there to help you succeed and get you to finish the day. Basically saying, if you do what you just say you did, we're staying on course to get X. So when you go in, now let's pivot a little bit from coaching leaders. What's their biggest mistake that they make when trying to hold their team accountable?
I think it comes down to knowing the incentives, Glenn. I really do. These leaders come in and they think, I got to crack the whip or I'm going to throw some money at it. You,
Right.
you, neither of those really work long term.
Hmm.
Everyone is different. So we have to understand that everyone is literally different in how they are incentivized. For instance, I don't care. Money has never been a driver for me. It's just not.
Right.
But recognition, huge. It's a huge thing for me because I want to help other people. That's always been my driving factor. So I think the biggest, and then the second thing, to answer your question, managers will come in and they'll label people. You're
Right.
lazy. You're not competent. You're whatever they say it is, and it's like actually, maybe they have a sick mom at home.
Right.
Maybe their they their wife has left them. And before we start berating or coming down on somebody, dig a little deeper and just say, is everything okay?
Right.
Because if things are messed up at home, and I know, again, that shouldn't be your problem, but it is as a leader in your
Mhm.
workplace, if they're having problems at home, it might be, hey, why don't you take some time, go take care of that
Right.
so you can show up 100%. So quite literally, and I've made that mistake. I can't tell you countless amount of times through my career where they're just lazy, they don't get it. No, they have other issues going on. Now, if they can't or they won't do it, then I know I just need to remove them from my culture. But if
Right.
they just don't know how and they're having other issues, cool. I can work with that. Let's dig into that a little bit. What, and that's the support you were talking about. Hey, how are we doing? Is there anything you're not understanding or ways that I can support you? Actually, yes, Glenn, there are so many ways you could help
Right.
me with your expertise. And then now we don't have to go back and forth with you like hurting their feelings. And now they're in a shell and now they're really not going to perform. Instead, you've said, how can I support you?
Yeah, I love that. And so when I train individuals, there's two things that I use. One is, you have to get to the bottom as a leader. Is it a knowing, KNOW problem, meaning they don't understand, or is it a no, I'm not going to do this? They're two separate. And a lot of times, new leaders and sometimes experienced leaders always default to, well, JM doesn't know what he's supposed to do. And we harp on that and we say, how many times do I have to tell you to do X, Y, and Z? Instead, if we just took a moment to say, well, wait a minute, we're not getting the results. I need to figure this out. JM, what do you remember from training about X? You're either going to tell me you know it or you don't, or somewhere in the middle. If you don't, and I, as you said earlier, have an open sort of communication channel with my team where they can say, Glenn, I'm sorry, I completely forgot. And it's like, no problem. I'll retrain you, get you back on track. Awesome. But now what have I done as a leader? We're not going to have that conversation again because I know I trained you. Even if somebody else did it, I know we can look each other in the eye, said, I did this. But if you say, no, I know exactly what to do. Now, to your point, I can say, well, wait a minute. If you know what you're supposed to do, how come we're not doing it? It could be something happens outside. I can address that. Maybe it's a discussion of, well, you know what, Jam, I always disagreed. I think my way is better. Great. Let's have that conversation. Let's figure that out. But to your point, if I just keep labeling people and keep saying, well, they're this or they're that, or and it's just one way, you're going to drive great people away or you're going to frustrate the hell out of yourself. And it's just not a great way because that really, to me, is not accountability. I think to your point, accountability is do what you say. And part of your job as a leader is to help coach them and develop them instead of manage them.
No, I agree. And when you say the NO, that to me, there's two ways that you can gauge that. If they don't have a good attitude and they don't put in the effort, then
Yep.
you know that they're the NOs. They are the people, look, they're the people that don't want to really be there. That's the people that you should remove. But if they're giving you great attitude, they're putting in the work. Some of my best performers were not the best out of the gate, but they
Sure.
gave me the work ethic. They showed up with a great attitude. They were a slower learner, but long term, they were awesome for my culture. They were awesome for the company. And we have to remember that. Some of your all-star performers, they're just so gifted, but if they show up with a crappy attitude every day, long term, they won't be there.
Right. And one of the things that I've noticed sometimes, and I really liked when you're talking about putting people with labels and in buckets. Oh, they used to be good, but they're not now. And you're not taking responsibility to figure out what happened, right? If you had a top performer and they're not performing well, there's a reason. And you have to start diving in to figure it out to see one, if I can salvage them, or no, they can't be salvaged, whatever it is. But if they were performing, it could be the way you're communicating. It could be what you said. I gave them money, but what they really wanted was a pat on the back. They wanted recognition, right? So again, there is this with personal accountability is taking the time to understand your folks, what motivates your folks, what gets them going, what they want from you so that you can deliver on that as well. Let me pivot now because you mentioned something and it ties with communication, clarity. Big, big one. That was my other one on here. So when you're talking about clarity, we can go down a couple different ways. One is clarity in the end goal, where we want to be, or clarity in our communication. So if we're focusing on successful leaders, how they're clear, or unsuccessful in terms of clarity or lack thereof. When we say lack of clarity, give me a few examples and then counter it with a better example of being clear.
So most meetings that you go into, you're going to go discuss something and you're really passionate about it. And then so you come to a solution, the rest of the meeting goes on, and then all of a sudden we finish up. It's the worst way to conduct a meeting. Whatever that decision was that was made, at the end of that meeting, be clear. Hey, this is what we committed to. This is the timeline. This is who owns what. It is probably the smallest change that every one of us can make to take a really average to ineffective meeting and make it extremely effective, is just by recapping that whatever that we are trying to accomplish. Because again, so often when people are in the moment and they're going and they're excited, cool, we were motivated for that moment. We have to recap and say, hey, let's be clear on what we need to do. And we're going to be checking in on this every single week. Right. We're not going to say our goal is to, sell 300 cars by the end of the month. It's June 1st. We're not going to check in until June 30th. That would be crazy.
Right.
We need to be clear on, okay, that's our goal. That means 100 per week. And we're going to check in every single time. How are we doing? What do we need to do to assess or change? And if you continue to do that, it's amazing how all of a sudden, once you're clear on what you have to do, then your day-to-day activities get so much more clear. So I hope that's an example that you can use.
No, that to me is great, because there are, and I think meetings, most people will say that was an ineffective meeting. Why? Because nothing was clear, nothing was resolved. And I 100%, you're spot on, is this idea of, well, we just assume everyone knows what they're going to do, versus giving them tangible things that we can say, we are going to check up Friday. But again, I always say, if you can't stand up and do it, it wasn't clear, right? Or that everybody can nod their head. If I say Friday, that's still vague. Friday morning, Friday afternoon, I need it by end of business. What is end of business or end of day? Well, is that the end of the workday at 5 o'clock? Is that 11:59 when it's over? That's, to your point, is we need so many tangible things. If I said to you, as you said, we're going to sell 300, we all know what that is, versus we need to sell more, or I need you to work harder, or I need you to pick up your numbers. I need more effort. Okay, stand up in front of me and do more effort. I have no idea what that means. So you're right. Clarity, even just saying, everybody repeat. What did we agree on? I think the mistake, or the reason why a lot of people don't do that, is they think it's insulting to you, JM, because you're an adult and you should be able to understand that. And I'm going, yeah, but that's okay. I just say, just so we're all clear, JM, you tell me what we agreed to. Not, do you know what? Oh yeah, I understand. Tell me. And then you go A, B, C, D. Great. No misunderstanding. But if for some reason you went A, C, E, I'm like, wait a minute, we didn't agree to E. Oh, I thought we did. Oh, you're right. We did. And then we changed it. D. Great. When is it due? Friday at noon. Awesome. Off we go. Right. So again, I think the more clear you can be, it's easier for people to execute. We forget that if I lay that path out, it's easier for my team to execute on and deliver the results I want, versus everyone getting frustrated throughout the week, and then we miss our goal, hence more frustrations.
Well, and to take that, just to really reinforce this, we all learn differently. Some people are audible learners. So you may say something and somebody's got it, right? Some people, they need to see it. I'm a see it person. So you may say something and you'll notice I'm always writing stuff down, because until I write it down and see it on paper, it doesn't officially stick in my brain. That's just the way I learn. And so to your point is, I may have said it, but then let's take that extra step and either, as you said, repeat it to me, or let's write it down. And then it becomes
Or
so,
even show you. I mean, there's countless times where I could tell you, you could write it down, but it's still not the way, because the picture in your head is different than the picture of my head. You may have to learn by, let me show you.
Mhm.
This is exactly what I want you to do. And you go, okay. And then I go, okay, you do it. I'll watch you. Now there's no misunderstanding, versus even if you wrote it down and I'm like, well, JM wrote it down, so he knows. And then you're over there going, what? How do I get the words from the paper to action the way that Glenn wanted them? So to your point is, everyone needs to, you have to be aware of how people learn, but also when they're executing, some people may need the benefit of, do you need me to show you how to do this? If someone says no, then we go back and we check. If they're doing it wrong, then maybe you did need me to show you how to do it. That's okay. But I think to your point, it is really important to understand how everyone learns or communicates, because we usually default to whatever works for us
Mhm.
as a leader and expecting everybody to just get it that way.
Well, and so what's so cool is you said the word check in. You don't just say it and then expect it, right? You always check in, see how it's going. And here's the other thing. I know a lot of people are listening, like, man, I don't have time to do all this. It will save you so much time
Oh, yes.
by doing this. And even you just immediately chuckle, because that's just, you save yourself so much time by doing these simple steps
It's
in the
so
beginning.
easy to get somebody back on track,
Mm.
right? Just think about it. I'm going to ask all the listeners, how many times have you gotten frustrated when you didn't get the results you wanted? So how much time did you waste worrying about that, getting mad about that, having to feel like, oh, I have to go do training again 47 times? Well, what if I showed JM how to do this? JM's doing it right in front of me. We're go, perfect. And then I follow up and JM's still doing it. And we're like, awesome. One day, all of a sudden, JM's supposed to be on the left side and JM's on the right side. And I can say, JM, how the hell did you get over on the right side? What do we remember from training? Oh, yeah, because change is hard for people. Habits drift back. All of a sudden, it's easier for me to get JM back on track because they were doing it before. Yes, in the front loaded, it's a little more work. But to your point, you save so much time at the end because it's just a word. Everyone goes, oh, yeah, that's where I'm supposed to be. And we can jump back on. No frustration, unless, as you said, we're heading down the road of they're not doing it for some other reason. They don't agree with it. They don't like it. They don't want it. But that's a whole separate conversation.
But then there's your clarity right there. They're not clearly not the right person for your team at that point, right? And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. So I got one more, and then as we wind this up, I could sit and chat with you forever. This is my fun spot
Me
for
too,
what I
man.
love to do. This idea of leaders vulnerability. Now I know some people stop, don't hit pause on this. I know vulnerable sounds weak, which I disagree, and the combination of humility. And I think there are two sides, but for a leader, when you say vulnerability, humility, explain to the listeners what that means from your perspective.
The best analogy I can give for humility would be, do you like to celebrate a birthday party all by yourself where you're all by yourself? So you are celebrated, just you, but you're by yourself? Or do you like celebrating with 20 of your friends around you? It could be in celebration of you, but you want them to share in it. So when it comes to like taking credit, have that birthday party where everybody's a part of it, not just you by yourself.
Right.
The other thing is, when it comes to vulnerability, I understand that is a scary idea for many people. And again, generationally, I was taught boys don't cry. That's terrible advice, right? It really is. But that was the way my dad was taught from his grandfather. So I don't fault him for that. Now, truly being vulnerable, and when I say that, being yourself, being authentic, taking the
Right.
mask off, that's what I mean by being vulnerable. Being exactly who you are, showing up 100% you, people can buy into that. When you try and put on a mask, sound a certain way, look a certain way, people see through that and they won't get behind you. And the definition of a leader is influence. And that is literally people that are following you. They won't follow someone fake. So if you can break it down to where, look, if I'm putting on a fake face, you're not going to have people that will run through a brick wall for you. You just don't.
Right.
But if you can just truly show up as yourself, authentic, not afraid to be who you are, you will have people that will follow you to the ends of the earth. And I know it's a scary idea, but that's what I'm talking about, is just taking those masks off and truly being you, and you will perform better every single time. You'll find the home you want to be in. This is such a profound idea. And I know, again, it can be scary. Just try it and you will
Yeah.
see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I agree. It can be overwhelming. I think that comes with for some people, it takes time, it's age, it's experience, it's a level of I don't care, but it's not easy. It's not easy to be vulnerable. It's not easy to be yourself. There is a lot of judgment in the world, especially today. Everybody's judging everybody by the way they look, how much you do, countless things. But I think to your point is, the more that you can just be true to yourself and say, this is what I believe in, and move through the world that way, then you don't have to remember the stories you tell everybody. What story did I tell JM? What story did I tell this person? Who was I to this person versus here's who it is? One of the best compliments I ever received was being on stage speaking and met people afterwards. They said, wow, you're the same person on stage as you are off stage. I said, well, there's only one me. I can't, my diction may not be perfect. I may talk a little too long. I may sound a little Jersey at times, but this is who I am. And like it or not, here's what you get. And I think the more, to your point, the more that you can show up, that goes back to what we were talking earlier of this consistency. If I have to worry about JM as my boss, which JM is showing up today, that's not comfortable. That's not consistent. That doesn't breed success. That's distraction of, oh, JM's in a bad mood. Oh, JM's changing things. Oh, JM doesn't like stuff. JM's doing what? JM's not even here today. That is not, to your point, showing up, doing what you say, being accountable to your team to be there and deliver and to help them.
Well, just the way you said it, even think of how much energy that would take to have to remember all the stories you said, look a certain way. That is absolutely depleting your already at your emotional currency. You only have so much.
Right.
So if you can just show up as you 100%, and that is what an amazing compliment to receive, Glenn, that is, you are just how you are on stage as you were off stage. And you know what that means? Glenn can give 100% of himself all the time instead of having to try to look a certain way, which isn't really him, and then get off the stage and look a different way. That would be just literally, I get tired thinking about it.
It is, trust me. There was a time that I worried about that, and it was very exhausting. And I finally just said it's not worth it, and just said this is who I am, and this is what I do, and this is how I think. And I think to your point, it's much easier for leaders. So listen, this has been phenomenal. As I said, I could talk to you. I'm so just glad that you popped into my circle. I'm looking forward to continuing building this relationship. But before we leave, I always have a few random rapid fire, whatever, get behind the mic type questions to understand. So don't overthink these, but just answer. All right, first question. What is your favorite cheat meal?
Oh, that's easy. It's a Granite Rock Grill in Rockland, California. And so if I can't go there, it's going to be an omelet and gluten-free pancakes, because I've been gluten-free now for 8 years. Oh, I miss tortillas and I miss pancakes. So 100% it's going to be an omelet and it's going to be gluten-free pancakes. And I don't care what time of the day it is.
Oh, there you go. What was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
Oh, you're going to hate to hear this. I was not a cartoon watcher. So I'm going to go with Archie comics. I read a lot of Archie comics as a kid. I've always been a reader, even if it was that stuff. So I'm trying to think if I even watched cartoons.
That's all right. Listen, comic books are great. I had them. I still, my wife always laughs because I have about 5,000 comics downstairs. So she always goes, who the hell did I marry? What's a movie or a show that when you run across it on TV, you have to stop and watch?
Snatch, every single time it's on. I love Guy Ritchie is brilliant. Pulp Fiction. So Tarantino, very dark films now that I'm saying it out loud. Braveheart is another one where I think I've watched, I don't know how many times. It's a lot. So those would be 3.
Okay. So what is a book or something you're listening to or reading right now that is inspiring you that you would recommend to somebody to read?
Man, right this second, I'm not loving the book that I'm reading, so I don't want to give that guy a hard time. That's
That's all
man.
right. You have to also now just pause on it. You have to give yourself permission to dump a book because sometimes it sounds good and it just, I've done that. I feel bad about it too, because I look at books on my shelf and I go, I never really finished that. So
I will give you one that most people don't hear of, and it's literally, and it's called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It's a very
oh
heavy read.
God. Oh, love it.
Oh,
Love it.
yeah.
Love it.
It's life altering. And I read that at least once a year just to give myself some perspective. So that would be, I read it earlier this year. It's not the one I'm reading now. I just don't want to give this author a hard
Nope.
time.
Nope. Nope.
I'm
Nope. You
not
don't have
loving
to.
it.
All right. Let's see. What's a motto or a creed that you live by?
It's not about me. For those leaders listening, this is one that I had to learn early. As a leader, it's not about me. It's about my family. It's about the people I work with. It's don't take credit for the work that they've done. So that is 100% something that I get behind.
Yeah, that's great. Great, great. Love that. All right. If I took all of your closest circle of friends and family and put them in a room, what's the one word they would use to describe you?
Excessive or love, and not together, and not together. My wife would say excessive immediately. She would beat everyone to the punch because everything I do is 150. It drives her crazy. And then what I would hope to hear is love, because I try to, that not being vulnerable, being vulnerable, excuse me. When I give a hug, I give a 5-year-old hug. Like, I'm giving you everything I got. So that's my hope, but my wife would say excessive.
Okay. Okay. Last question. We've touched on so many things. And as I said, I hope everybody listens to this multiple times with your pen and pencil to go over this. If there's one thing that we talked about that you would hope that the listeners would take away, the one thing, what would be the one thing out of all that we've discussed today?
It would just be yourself. Find who your true self is, and don't be afraid to show the world who you are, because you're amazing. And if your intentions are pure and good, then show it, because it's an amazing thing to do, and it's such a freeing feeling. That would be the one thing I hope everybody took away, is I can be me, and my intentions are good, so people will receive that well.
Great. Love that. Love that. So listen, as I said, JM, it has been just an absolute pleasure getting to know you, for you to take time here. I really just, I've dived into your book. I've been on your website. I've listened to your podcast. I see how you also interact with your wife. So I will assume your family and your friends, and I would say they are all very blessed to have you in their lives. I wish you nothing but continued success. As I said, I'm, really just inspired by what you're doing. I can't wait to learn more about it and be more, spend some time with you, come down to Florida and see you as well. So how can everyone find you, either on social media? Where's the place that they hang out? Where, tell me the podcast, et cetera.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. So Let's Go Win is the podcast. Let'sGoWin.com is the website, and Let's Go Win 365 on any social media. And brother,
And
thank
Let's
you.
Go Win book reading.
Yeah. We tried to make it easy for everybody, but please, thank you, because your family, whether you like it or not, by proxy, the Pasch family, I've been adopted, or I've inherited, one way or the other. We are family, and I love you guys, and I just appreciate how you show up in the world, what you're doing for so many people. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And so for everyone, if you've made it this far, again, I hope you found some great value in the conversation. Please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, share it out. There's a lot of people who could benefit from our conversation. As I said, I do not take it lightly. There's a lot of places you could listen to information or watch information, and the fact that you spent time with me today and JM means the world to me. So as I say at the end of every episode, you're in charge, but JM just gave you a few more tools to help you become more successful, both personally and professionally. And I look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of You're in Charge, Conversations That Spark Change. Have a great week. Look forward to seeing you next time.